is it looking so gloom for Southeast Asia?
Well, Haslinda, the job and income losses have been quite severe in, across the world, but also particularly in Southeast Asia. And this is a pity because if you look at what the region has achieved prior to the pandemic, that was very impressive. You were talking about Indonesia now just before this. Indonesia made impressive gains in reducing poverty to single digits before the pandemic. But certainly that's going to be now tested because of the impact of COVID-19. Job losses globally, as we know, quite serious. We are looking at millions of jobs that have been lost, at least about 250 million full-time jobs that have been lost. And Asia and Pacific region will account for 70% of those job losses. And particularly in Southeast Asia, our estimates show that at least about 15 million full-time jobs may be lost. And clearly that translates into significant income losses and in turn to poverty, more poverty, a lot more people becoming poor or slipping into poverty, as Linda.
Ramesh, we just saw Indonesian President Joko Widodo getting a shot of the vaccine. So much hope is pinned on this vaccine, but, some plans have already been derailed. How concerned are you we could see a prolonged recession and hence a worse outlook for unemployment in the region?
It is true that the pandemic is obviously unprecedented. The impact is very serious. Take tourism, for example, a sector that's so important for Southeast Asia. We can say that the sector has been devastated. It's going to take 2, 3 years, even 4 years, some say, for the sector to recover. So certainly, it's going to take the region time to gain back on job losses, income losses, and the gains that have been made in poverty reduction. But we are quite optimistic if you look at the impact of the stimulus measures. Take Philippines as a specific example. Between about July last year to November, because the economy started gradually opening up after the stringent quarantine measures in the early days of the pandemic, they were able to get back of about 900,000 jobs. And we are seeing similar patterns in Indonesia and Thailand and other countries. So there is certainly hope. And then clear evidence also emerging, as Linda, that the fiscal stimulus and the other income support measures are having impact. Vaccines clearly will play a strong role. Public confidence will certainly go up once larger numbers of people get vaccinated after the frontliners are supported, as Linda.
Ramesh, you talked about how the pandemic has wiped out years and years of progress in trying to eradicate poverty. I mean, what does it mean then for inequality among countries within industries?
Well, certainly, for inequality to be impacted, in fact, to be positively impacted, it takes years of economic progress. And clearly what we are seeing in the last year or so certainly going to have certain long-term impacts on inequality, which is actually showing signs of progress. So we are concerned. Certainly, initially, the transmission channel will work through income losses, poverty. And certainly, if some sectors are going to be permanently crippled, certainly that's going to erode the gains that countries have made in inequality. So a lot hinges on the recovery measures at play, including vaccines, and subsequently how impactful the stimulus measures are going to be. As I said, we are seeing signs of progress, and it very much depends on which sectors will stay, which sectors of economies may completely, probably may disappear, which is not unlikely, Haslinda.
Ramesh? Ramesh, what about poverty itself? And parts of this region, Southeast Asia, do actually have different definitions of poverty and different gauges of it. How does that actually figure in your thinking?
Yeah, certainly, you have the region is very dynamic. So you've got large economies, which are quite significant in size. And you've got smaller economies which have been growing fast, and they do adopt different thresholds. At the Asian Development Bank, we look at different thresholds as well. So either you can look at, say, $1.90 or $3.20. Some countries, Thailand, for example, looks at a threshold of above $5. let's take the middle one. If we take the $3.20 threshold, Rish, then you're looking at poverty jumping in the region from about 95 million prior to the pandemic to about 115 million or so. So you're going to see about 20 million people who will become newly poor or will slip into poverty. And there would be country variations, of course, in terms of the impact or how the ratio is going to change.
Ramesh, what about, crises? Some languages have no word and they have the word opportunity instead. Has this been an opportunity for some countries to enact structural reforms which are badly needed before, and the pandemic itself accelerating the trend towards those?
Absolutely, Rish. We are in policy dialogue continuously with all the ASEAN countries, and there is certainly very clear recognition that this is an opportunity. This crisis has, in the past, after the Asian financial crisis or the global financial crisis, that this is an opportunity that applies to every country and senior officials and ministers that we speak to. And within the broad class of structural reforms, a couple of things come. Human development going to be very critical. And within that, what can countries do to strengthen the social protection systems? Many countries are now going rapidly into things like unique identification. Philippines, for example, is accelerating its efforts. Smaller economy, Cambodia has done very well in terms of strengthening its ID Poor program to achieve more transparency. Investment climate reforms, Rish, are going to be quite critical as well. Certainly, in order to regain that confidence on a faster track basis than what the region was able to achieve prior to the pandemic, competitiveness reforms are going to be quite critical. And one item I'd particularly add is what can be done to the large swaths of the informal segments of the Southeast Asian economies. If you look at Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, we've got large numbers of informal sector laborers. They need to be certainly brought into the main formal stream. Yes, Krish.
Ramesh, very, very quickly, you've got improvements in income and poverty numbers normally have a time lag of about 2 to 3 years. Very, very quickly, why is that?
Oh, it's because of the transmission channels impact, Rish, particularly this crisis, because of the starting with pandemic to economic and possibly financial crisis, and also sectors, the impact of sectors going to be quite different. We see in the short run, certainly in a year's time, countries would certainly start seeing progress, reduction in poverty. But it's going to take at least about 2 to 3 years to regain or to go back to the place where the countries were prior to the pandemic, Krish.